Greetings and welcome to video number 7 of the Greater Reality Healing Program. Hi, I'm Dr. Mark Pitstick. To learn about my training, experience, and outreaches, please visit soulproof.com/about. And please watch the previous videos in this series if you haven't already. It will help so much to understand what I'm presenting here. Finally, the articles mentioned are free and they're available at soulproof.com/articles. So we're dealing in this video about key number 6 to journeying from deeply grieving to brightly shining. And that's for any sort of big change in life, which certainly can seem like losses and tragedies. And this key is upgrade your understanding about the source. And that's one term that I'll use for God, the light, the presence. I use a number of them. Now, if you're completely happy with your beliefs about Creator, there's no need to listen to this section. In fact, if you have conservative, very conservative beliefs, you might find it upsetting. So, but otherwise, keep listening, watching. Many people have found, and keep in mind, worked with tens and tens of thousands of people for over 50 years in different fields, hospitals, mental health centers, holistic private practice, etc. So I know how people are. You know, I've worked with them, I've talked to them, I know, always drilled down deep. I'm not a superficial guy, obviously. So I know for a fact that many people have found religious teachings about God and the afterlife to be lacking, or sometimes even ridiculous when loved ones pass on, for example. Well-meaning ministers may offer platitudes that people find offensive or useless. For example, the statements, it's God's will, God works in mysterious ways, they're in a better place now. God, one of the most offensive for bereaved parents, God wanted your little one to be with him. So a couple things about this. First of all, it's God's will. I mean, everything is God's will because that's all that exists. With my definition of God, it's all the energy, creativity, love that exists. So in that sense, it's true. But you know, these sayings, and in ministers' defense, I mean, I went to theology school. They're doing the best they can with what they were given. I was shocked to see how little pastoral counseling training was involved there. You know, a lot of it was about biblical history and setting up and running a church. So we'll forgive it that way. So after announcements and demonstrations, which I'll discuss in a later key about the Soul Phone Project, we will invite religious teachers and clergy from all religious denominations to upgrade their understandings based on current information. Excuse me, I'm making a note here, and as I've said before, these videos aren't for Hollywood. I'm super busy, so if I've got to stop and make a note, I'm not going to splice or edit that. Just imagine we're sitting here talking together. When a loved one passes on by suicide, religious support can be even less helpful or downright cruel. I work with family members who are told by their fundamentalist preachers, your child is in hell right now because he committed the unforgivable sin. Oh my gosh, really? We're talking about, when I talk about God, I'm talking about the creator and sustainer of all life throughout the cosmos. And this kind of creative energy, cosmic intelligence, is going to take offense when someone is having such a tough time that they can't handle it anymore. It's just so idiotic. So that view that suicide is an unforgivable sin is blasphemous to the creator and sustainer of all life. Open-minded and loving humans can understand that somebody is just so imbalanced or in pain, or for whatever reason just can't handle being on earth right now. Surely angels, guides, master teachers, and the source understand as well. So to learn more about this important topic, I'll list some articles at the end of this video. Suicide is now the number 2 cause of death for ages 15 through 35. So the root causes need to be addressed as fully and quickly as possible. As discussed in article number 36, these root causes are clear to holistic healthcare providers. However, the causes are not widely understood by most people or even traditional medical providers who often specialize, and their training is so focused on drugs and surgery that they're not aware of natural but very powerful natural healing approaches. Now, for the root causes of suicide to be addressed, we need to be able to talk about it openly without the shame and guilt that people on earth fear. They also feel anger oftentimes, but they can't even get in touch with that because how can you be angry at somebody that passed a suicide? But think of all the pain that was caused, not intentional pain most of the time. So historically, answering questions about the guiding, organizing, and designing presence and power behind all life, and that's what I mean by God, G-O-D, the guiding, organizing, designing, presence, and power. So historically, answering questions about that, death, afterlife, was entrusted to religious institutions. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but there are over 40,000 different denominations in Christianity alone, and over 10,000 religions in our world. As such, it's difficult to accurately characterize their performance. In general, however, I give religion a grade of C for their teachings about the source and the nature of reality. Teachings about this by mainstream denominations, the silent majority, can be so vague as to be useless. And teachings from very conservative/fundamentalist denominations, the vociferous or vocal minority, get a grade of F-. Is that even a grade, F-, since they horribly scare, scar, and misinform so many people. People who think for themselves and listen to their heart understandably reject bizarre, fear-based messages. One of the best stories I heard about this was a woman on one of my radio shows that called in, elderly woman, and she told about when she was a little girl, attended a fundamentalist church with her parents. They were just looking around looking for a home church. Well, in this service, the preacher talked long and loudly about a fiery eternal hell and the importance of avoiding it. And after the service, the family stops by the front door to shake hands with the minister and chat a bit. The minister said, "Well, how did you like the service, little girl?" And she answered, "I didn't like it. God wouldn't put anyone in hell forever." The preacher replied, "Well, maybe you shouldn't come here anymore." And the girl's parents answered, "You're right, maybe we shouldn't." So that's so important. First of all, that's the sign of a more evolved soul. Even that little girl knew, she was listening to her heart, that that's not how a God of love operates. Secondly, she had loving and supportive parents. If her parents had also been fundamentalists, she could have been beaten down about it and beaten about it, and then not listen, covered over that inner voice that tells us how to live and what's really true oftentimes. When I was in theology school, I discovered a statement by Max Mueller, who was a 19th century pioneer of comparative religion. And he said, "Nothing can be really true that offends the sensibilities of a child." And I wrote that on a little blue index card and posted it right in front of my desk where I would see it often. I had that for many, many years because it's such a foundational statement, especially regarding the nature of Creator and the afterlife. Again, nothing can be really true that offends the sensibilities of a child. It's a great litmus test for discovering, realizing, discerning what is really true and what's BS. Unfortunately, views from conservative denominations are often still tied to Roman and Greek images from 300 BC or earlier. A huge, white-bearded, and long-haired white man who sits on a throne in the sky and arbitrarily decides who lives or dies, when, and how. And that image is so strong. It's been in so many paintings and sculptures and so on that it is a archetype in the minds of many people. That hopelessly archaic and inaccurate image of the divine keeps many people, understandably, from wanting a personal relationship with the light. Joseph Campbell is another teacher who helped me so much break from the traditional religion. And I'm not talking about Lutheran, because that was pretty mainstream and there wasn't much focus on hell. But for several years, age 18 through 21, I attended a really fundamentalist church, I will not name, for the most important of all reasons. My girlfriend went there, and I was exposed to this stuff, and it's really traumatic. And so it took me a while to let that go and to regain my personal relationship with God and Christ because of all the just schizoid and fear-based things that were taught in the other church. So Joseph Campbell, professor of comparative religion and author of a number of books, but one, for example, The Hero's Journey, said that the, quote, God, with a capital G, behind all creation in the cosmos, differs greatly from local provincial gods as viewed by warring tribes millennia ago. So this is an important distinction. Remember, there's the God of all cosmos, okay? The loving, intelligent, creative, forgiving creator. But then there are people believe in gods with a small g that, again, for example, from the Old Testament that were described, and different tribal groups have their own little gods. So the next time somebody starts talking about a God that makes sense, trust your inner voice and don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. In other words, don't disregard the concept of there being a higher power just because the description of some people about it is, let's say, limited. Let's be nice. And also, in what other field do we rely on beliefs and statements from thousands of years ago? So that's why I talk about these things. I know it upsets some people, but it needs to be discussed openly, respectfully, with dialogue. The good news is that contemporary clinical evidence from near-death experiences and life between lives data indicates that humans are not separate from Creator. As many people report after clinically dying, encountering the light, and returning back to Earth, we each are one with the One and part of Source energy. And the Bible alludes to this. I mean, it was mainly Jesus, the Father and I are one, but so are we all one with Father, Mother, God. Now that insight changes everything for the better and helps you realize that indeed it's all good, it's all God. By the way, I just mentioned Father and Mother God. I have found that many of the supposed horrible actions of Creator can appear as they are ridiculous if you just replace the pronoun she for he and her for him, or Mother God. I mean, what mother would send to hell in spite, and you're dying, and you committed the unforgivable sin? They wouldn't. So when you remove that patriarchal aspect, immediately you get a better image of what the divine is really like. Luckily, denominations from every religion teach our essential oneness with Creator. So keep in mind that each religion has many denominations, and some of them are more open-minded, open-hearted, and these are considered to be more esoteric, that is, containing the true core teachings, and they're usually not so appreciated because they require their students to learn certain things and go through a period of time before all this was shared. You know, the old "don't throw pearls before swine" idea. Partly because they don't want to adulterate the teachings, and partly because they want to make sure the students appreciate it. This is complicated stuff. So there's the exoteric with an X, that's kind of with all the wall dressing and, you know, on the corners of big streets and so on, shouted from the rooftops. But there's the esoteric with an S, that is the more, we'll say, I find to be enlightened teachings. So, for example, Sufism is a more esoteric denomination in Islam, and I've studied it quite a bit with Neil Douglas Klotz. Sufi dancing is wonderful, lots of wisdom and beauty there, and it's as pure as any teaching I've seen about Creator and how we can best live and love one another. So here's a statement from Sufism about our essential oneness with Creator. I looked into myself and saw that I am He. Wow, I mean, that's so powerful, so concise. And you can replace she if you want. I looked into myself and saw that I am she. Referring to the one, the Hindu Upanishads proclaimed, I am everywhere, shining forth from all beings. This is just poetry. Christianity, the Father and I are one. Islam, all is Allah. The sayings, isness is, God is one, and I am that I am, all reflect that there is no actual separation or duality in life. Joel Goldsmith wrote in his book, The Infinite Way, that which I am seeking, I am. So this is so important, because when you know that you're not separate from Creator, in fact, you're an integral part of that. The Buddha described it as, said, you want to know about the nature of humans? Go down to the seashore where waves are crashing against rocks. Each one of those drops in the water is like all the people or souls in the cosmos. We each are part of that oceanic divine. However, when a wave crashes against a rock for a moment, you see the individual droplets of spray go up in the air. That's like a human incarnation. It only lasts for 2 seconds. And yet, during that time, the drops, if they went to fear-based fundamentalist church services, would say, oh no, I'm all alone, I'm afraid, I'm going to die, I'm separate, no one loves me, it's all bad, why is, there's no God, or if there is, he's cruel and doesn't care. All that melodrama, which is so needless, when in fact that drop is still part of the ocean, it's just up in the air for a moment. So that's kind of what a human incarnation is about. And when you also realize the indications that we as souls volunteer to come here for good reasons, then you realize it's not God's fault. Poor God gets blamed for so many things, and we are all inseparable from, inextricably interconnected with each other and Source. So that really addresses so many of the seeming mysteries and unfairnesses that humans ask about. For example, the question, this is probably the number one question I've been asked by bereaved parents, why did God take my child from me? So with all due respect, I understand that question is nonsensical. When you remember that you and your loved ones, first of all, these kids are only kids in this brief space-time experience. They're eternal souls. They're beings of energy, consciousness, just like all of us. Also remember that we're all integral, infinite, eternal, and beloved parts of God right now. Again, souls/people choose, ideally in alignment with their spiritual support team and God's will, options for when and how to transition from Earth. I know it's tough when a loved one passes, or it can be tough, but these different ways of passing are just tickets back home, whether it's dying from old age, unknown causes, being murdered, suicide, an accident, an illness. They're just tickets back home. They're just different off-ramps to go back to the really real place and wrap up this earthly incarnation. And there's good evidence that multiple potential off-ramps from Earth are reportedly designed during pre-birth planning. Edgar Cayce was one of the first that taught about this. He said, okay, you're born at a certain time, and then after so many years, are like this many different potential off-ramps. You could pass when you're 3 years old, or you could pass when you're 100 years old, depending on a number of factors. Can you reach your desired goals? Do you have the brain and body needed to fulfill those? Do you still want to do what you planned here to do? Just all sorts of factors. So knowing that helps, ease up, because people are like survivors, or not survivors, because we all survive. You don't die. But those on Earth will say, if only I would have been somewhere, been there, done something different. And I'm like, no, the time and the method of a person's passing is often set, and for good reasons. Mavis Patilla, who taught my fiance Andy about evidential mediumship, said that decisions, plans in, quote, spirit world are made 6 weeks ahead of Earth time. So this is much more vast than we can imagine, but it's also much more safe, beautiful, fairly set up. Also, remember that your loved ones weren't taken, back to the why did God take my little one? They're not taken far away. They weren't taken a gazillion miles up in the sky. They're right here. It's all here, be here now, Ram Dass. It's just depending on the vibration, the frequency, the energy, whether you can see them or not. So this is so important to remember. Also, since the word God automatically conjures up images of a big dictatorial guy in the sky, you may want to upgrade your term for the creator and sustainer of all life. I prefer the light, all that is, the one, source energy, higher power, the divine, creative energy, and cosmic intelligence. So you can just mix these terms in with your language. Write them down where you'll see them. And each one of these terms describes a different facet of God that helps you understand what it really is. And I say it because do we really think the divine has one gender? He, she, it. The trouble with that approach is if you say it too quickly. So many years ago, during a dark night of the soul in my youth, I was in my early 20s. I sat in my car one night. Everything just kind of seemed to be falling apart. What I planned to do, where I planned to live, the young lady I planned to spend my life with, all that, just nothing was working out. I had my bachelor's degree. I had no idea what I wanted to be or do. Well, no wonder, look at what I'm doing. Who could know that? It takes many years for that to take form. But anyway, I had the wherewithal, or something caused me to start a prayer. I remember sitting in my car, dark, and not knowing what else to do. I just prayed, Dear God, please help me to know and do your will. Such a simple prayer. And I used that prayer every day for many years. Now, 50 years later, I would word it differently. Dear Creator and Sustainer of all life, thank you for helping me to always know and fulfill my soul's missions in alignment with yours. Because the best prayers I know are prayers of gratitude. Thank you, because you don't have to use prayers of supplication. Please help me. As the Bible mentions, the rain falls on the just and unjust. So we are always getting help, guidance, assistance, love. It's just a matter of whether we accept it, receive it, or aware of it, break through our lower energies enough to notice it, and then put it to use and use it to help others. So looking back, that prayer seemed to be a turning point, and I recommend it for you. It marked a deeper personal spiritual relationship with the Source, even though my traditional religious beliefs had shifted radically. My prayers again shifted from supplication, God please help me, to gratitude, thank you for helping me. Big, big difference. So to close this key, I highly recommend that you have a heart-to-heart talk with your higher power. And you could just say, Dear Universe, or Dear Cosmos, if you want to look at it as all energy, which it is, or you can use more religious, earthly terms, that make you think there's a divine parent that's helping, because there is. You can see it in different ways. So have a heart-to-heart talk. Say that you'd like to understand more about the creative intelligence and realize that it's within you. It's all around you. There's nothing and no one to fear. Here's some suggested action steps for this key. First of all, we just talked about have that heart-to-heart talk. Next, attend services at churches and spiritual groups that share a more accurate image of a loving and intelligent creative intelligence. And then post quotes from above that I mentioned that resonate with you, so you'll see them more often. To learn more about this topic, see articles number 4, When a Loved One Passes On by Suicide, number 5, When You Are Considering Suicide, 13, What is God Really Like, 36, Suicide, Core Causes and Holistic Solutions, number 78, Why Did God Take My Loved One, and 100, Enlightenment. By the way, the article 36, Suicide, Core Causes and Holistic Solutions, some people who have a loved one who chose suicide take on as a mission to help others, try to prevent that from happening with other people, especially young people. So you'll find a lot of information there. All right, that wraps this video. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care, God bless, let it shine.